Valentine's Day is an overrated, commercialized holiday that actually has a dark origin. Welcome back to the TCL podcast, where we talk about murder and other forms of crime. I do have a YouTube channel that you can go and watch as well. I also have a Patreon that you can join, and by joining, you will receive early access to episodes scheduled to come out, such as this one. I also have a merch shop that you can go and buy something from. Um, for any updates, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Now that I have all that set out of the way, why don't I dive into today's episode? For those of y'all that don't know, I hate Valentine's Day. I do with a passion. Yeah, there's only one Valentine's Day I love in particular. If you know anything about me, it'd be February 14th, 1929. I'm not even going to tell you why I love it. I'm going to let you go see if you can figure it out. Alright. It is on my merch shop, and you can go and buy that if you would like. But today we are going to start a new series called Valentine's Day Murders. And for our first episode, we will be discussing the case of Toni Jo Henry, who was born Annie Beatrice McQuiston and was named the Tigress. She was a murderer with only one known victim, whose crime occurred February 14th, 1949. And her victimology includes salesman Joseph P. Calloway by shooting him in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So on November 28, 1942, she was executed in Louisiana. So, to me, when I was doing this case, it sounded like she was trying to be the Bonnie to his Clyde. Honestly, that's what I think about this case. But she was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and was the first of 5 children. Her mom died of TB when she was only 6, and at 13 she began working at a macaroni factory at the age of 13 in local, and it wasn't like if you can imagine, it wasn't an actual macaroni factory. It was a brothel where she was a prostitute, and she quickly became addicted to drugs and alcohol. In 1939, she would meet Clyde Henry, who will be known as Cowboy, in which I will be calling him that for the remainder of this episode, where she worked. Cowboy was down on his luck, and he was a prize fighter whenever he fell in love with her. They were doomed from the start, let's be honest. They were very, very toxic together. And the couple married on November 25th, 1939, and would take their honeymoon in SoCal. It was during this time that Cowboy was able to wean his wife Bride off her various drug addictions. Upon returning to California, Henry was arrested for the murder of a Texas man prior to their marriage. In January 1940, he was sentenced to 50 years in the Texas State Pen at Huntsville, Texas. Toni Jo will begin contemplating her plans to break her husband out of jail. And, like I said, it sounds like she's trying to be Bonnie to his Clyde. We all know how that came out, right? Yeah, most of us remember how that went. Well, she would get an accomplice by Harold Archie Burks, who devised a plan to rob a bank, and this was in hopes of securing money to aid in breaking him out of jail. Again, you see where I'm going with this, right? That's what I thought. Yeah. In this way, this is where Joseph P. Calloway would come into play. Calloway was delivering a Ford coupe to a friend whenever he came across Toni Jo and Archie Burks. Unaware of their plan, he offered to give each a ride. They drove past Jennings, Louisiana, where Toni Jo and Archie would rob him at gunpoint, and they proceeded to lock him in the trunk of his car and drive down a country road. The duo planned to use this Ford as the getaway vehicle. If getaway car popped into your mind, then you are a Swiftie. You know it. Anyway, Calloway. However, they soon decided to pull the car over near a small paddock Calloway was ordered out of the car and told to undress. He then ushered used behind a he was then ushered behind a haystack, told to kneel and say his prayers. Calloway was shot once in the head with a .32 caliber. He died at the scene. After a brief stop in Arkansas, Toni Jo would head back to Shreveport, where she would take refuge with her aunt, who was later interviewed by a Shreveport police officer, during which it was revealed that she revealed the murder and disclosed the location of the body. At the first trial, I can't believe I actually made that. Anyway, at her first trial, it was held on March 27 to 29, 1940, and due to her good looks, the possibility of the death penalty, and severity of the charges, the trial gained a lot of press coverage. She would claim that Archie was the one responsible who fired the fatal shot, but after deliberating for 6 hours, they convicted her to death, and her accomplice was later convicted and sentenced to death. Toni Jo appealed this and was granted a new trial. The second trial, of course, occurred on February 1941. Unlike the first trial, Archie Burks took the stand to testify against Toni Jo, and after hours of deliberation, she was again convicted and sentenced to death. She gained an appeal, and was granted a new trial. And this trial occurred January 1942. We all know the fact that this occurred January 1942, we all know what was happening in this time in history, right? Anyway, Toni Jo was once again convicted, sentenced to death. She appealed, but this time her appeal was denied. So when Henry was incarcerated at Lake Charles Prison, which, by the way, if you ever been to Lake Charles, it is gorgeous. We passed through it on our way to Houston, and it was beautiful. Anyway, sorry. While she was incarcerated at Lake Charles Prison, she befriended Father Wayne Richard, head of the local Catholic parish, where he would eventually baptize her. And during this time, Henry was being tried. Louisiana changed its method from execution to hanging to death by electrocution. Toni Jo was executed November 28, 1942, and the DA was Griffin T. Hawkins of Lake Charles. Father Richard was present at the execution and would officiate her burial 4 days later. 4 days prior to her execution, Calloway escaped from prison to see his wife one last time. He was recaptured in Beaumont, Texas. I've been to Beaumont, it's really nice. Anyway, soon afterward, Claude Henry was paroled due to ill health. He was killed by a cafe owner on July 15, 1945 in Dallas while out on parole. Never been to Dallas, would love to go to Dallas one day. Anyway, A Savage Wisdom was a novel written by Norman German, and it was inspired by her life. And the book is fiction, a novel that is categorized in subgenre alternative history, and it changes certain facts of of her life and posits that what might have happened under different circumstances. Henry's story is one that focuses on the film entitled The Pardon, which was shot on location in Shreveport. The actress for that movie was Jamie King, and she would play Toni Jo Henry. John Hawkes would play Archie Burks, and that was with T.J. Thine, Jason Lewis, Lee Winnall, and Tom Guinea. Tom Anton is the producer and director. Toni Jo's mom died when she was only 6, that's the thing. So let's take that into consideration. Let's go into a little bit of her backstory, why don't we? Well, when her mom died when she was 6, her dad remarried. She was never happy with the new domestic arrangements and begged her aunt to take her away from the family home. She got a job at the age of 13 at the macaroni factory, but was fired with the manager and then found out that her mom died from tuberculosis. She was beaten by her father whenever she got home that day and resolved to leave. She soon got thrown into prostitution. At this at this was the one that few things that she could actually do. She was petite, very pretty, jet black hair, so getting customers, that wasn't going to be a problem, right? Well, she also took on, this also resulted in her taking on smoking, drinking, taking cannabis, associating with Shreveport's underworld. She was arrested several times during her teens, including assaulting a man, but avoided prison by virtue of her age. In 1939, this is when she would meet Calloway, um, where he was working full time and fell, and she was working full time and fell for him immediately. He was he was down on his luck, and she felt instantly attracted to him. So right away, it was really toxic from the beginning. Though she was able to eventually lean off, still. So, so whenever she was at her trials, like photographers fussed with the camera, Toni Jo said, "I smiled twice, mister. You haven't shot yet. Have you, have any idea how much talent you're being wasted here today?" It was one of many jokes that she would crack as she waited for the phone to ring, chain smoking and making small talk. "And the liar is guaranteed a lot for a lifetime," she said at one point. "You know, it's one person whose lifetime is whose liar lasted a lifetime." This was not funny, quite so funny, as she was electrocuted November 28, 1942. And the Wire all reported that Calcasieu Henry screamed and trashed and destroyed Cell in his grief. He was definitely her Clyde, all right, but yet she wasn't just bonny enough to get him out of prison, now was she? Henry, Cowboy, was shot and killed in a brawl with a barkeep and raced to the dark and from the bayou. Alright, y'all, that's it for today's episode. I will see y'all next time. Happy Valentine's Day for anybody who actually loves this holiday. I'm not a full cynic, I promise, but if you haven't figured out what February 14th, 1929 is yet, I will tell you at the end of episode 5 of this mini series. Alright, y'all have a great day.